You don't even look at freaking Lamborghinis once you're at TX2K long enough. You're like,
that
was just another R8 or Huracan. You're just like,
yeah, that was that was an interesting thing that we were talking about. Actually, we were in the lanes at one point talking with Brett and Jim, and it was like, when did a twin turbo Huracan become so normal? Or an R8, like we'd be, especially in the roll race stuff when we'd be up there. Well, I mean, there were a lot of, actually quite a few that were drag racing, the DCT classes and stuff like that. But specifically in the roll race stuff, if we were in the lanes, we're like, oh, we're going to run against the really nice green Performante. Like, well, which of the 7? I don't know. Like, and I'm not making fun of them. It's just like, that's the way it became.
There's so
they're
many.
everywhere. And most of them are fast already, and then like incremental levels beyond that, of course.
Yeah, well, like 200 mile an hour cars, that is very impressive for stock motor, stock trans, and there's a lot of them.
Incredibly impressive.
That is very insane. Like if people aren't around cars enough to realize how nutty that is, like I know the Sissio car, pretty local car, that green R8, it's very impressive car, like a 200 mile an hour car. I mean, there's just so many, and it's kind of funny because it basically killed the Gallardo. Gallardos are never seen again. Once that Huracan came out, it's just like they all disappeared.
Yeah, unless you're like unless you're just like a sucker for the nostalgia aspect of the the 04 to 08 cars with the nice motor sound and all that. Like, I mean, if you want that and you want a gated shifter, like that's the car, and that's all, and they're awesome and they're cool. If performance 10/10 is the main driving force, then that car really up the ante.
But even like the Huracan, when you see them for sale, they're almost all turboed as well.
Yeah, right. It's like hard to find a stock one now.
That's what it seems like. And I guess that's just because the tuning was opened up and everybody makes turbo kits now for them.
And there you go. So that's kind of ties into what I was saying earlier about like the platform. Like you can't really call a place up and get a turbo system for a Gen 5 Viper to get mailed to your door.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you could, I'd probably tell you good luck. And that's different in the market with the R8 and the Huracan. There are places that you can do that, a handful, right? And there's fuel system solutions, and there's electronic solutions, and you can contract a guy that's tuned 50 others that run really well, and you can get a transmission built from these guys. So you can do that. This is my fear for that. If that's, I don't know if it's the right word, but those cars have gotten so fast with the ability for someone to, for the most part, order the parts in and put it together. And I'm not necessarily saying like you're going to in your 2-car garage. Like, I'm sure that exists too. But like I'm saying a shop that there's companies that have experience working on cars, just plainly like that, right? That are able to order this engine and this turbo system and this fuel system, this electronics and so on and so forth, and put it all together, and they contract someone to tune it, and that goes great until it doesn't. And that's my only concern about that, because like what I mean is if the place that's putting those cars together wasn't involved in creating that solution or engineering that product from the beginning, their ability to diagnose and fix or remedy or evolve or any of those things is just going to be less. And that's okay for some people, but it's not once you run into breakage, right? Because that's the dangling lure with those cars. It's like, it's so easy to go fast. It's just asking to, go a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. And then you start to get into that position where people just start throwing parts at stuff when things are failing. And then that can kill the experience for the customer, right?
And throwing parts at things on R8 is very different than throwing parts at things on an LS.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
Like if
right?
your LS is doing something weird, it's kind of cheap to just throw some parts at it.
Or, so case in point, right? So if you have an LS platform and let's say you run into an anomaly that you just can't get past, like you're running into something that you don't know what is happening, there is a large amount of resource available to you that you can go looking for. And you're probably going to get a lot of bad answers, but you might get a couple of good ones in there too to kind of lead you down that path. That doesn't really exist in the same way in this market of R8, Huracan. I'll throw Viper in there. GTR I'll put in there also, although that's getting a little bit more accessible now.
Yeah, we're talking locked ECUs and kind of people keep all their proprietary stuff very hush-hush.
Right.
I don't have a problem with that, but that's the nature of how it ends up. And, you end up with a car that you physically can't diagnose yourself. Even if you are, the best mechanic in the world, you end up with a car that just came from a shop that you can't even diagnose yourself and do anything on yourself.
Yeah, and that's where like there's value to me. Like what we're doing as a company is we're providing a solution and a service and a capability, and that's a relationship at the same time. You get this car that like every rock has been turned. You have to have the relationship with them at the same time so that the continuation of that car's life is enjoyable, or the next owner of it, right? Like if you're purchasing a car that's already been built, like you better know what kind of ability for service is there for that product going forward. Otherwise, there might be a whole lot of start over type thing. So
yeah, that's true. I've never really thought about that with like, I've never been in the market for one, but like when you open up a Viper hood and it has your logo on the intake manifold or right on the
or on the intercooler,
there where you see it, that kind of brings you a little bit of like kind of peace of mind to knowing like, oh, they know the build, like they, if I had an issue, bring it back to them. Sure. And with the R8 market, you could open it up and it's just have some blank turbos on there with like a blank intercooler, and you're just like, oh.
Or who made the induction system, like the turbo system, may not be who did the engine, or may not be who did the tuning, or may not be who did the installation work on, any of that. And so again, and I just want to make sure the internet doesn't, rampage on me here. Like I'm not saying that's wrong. It's just those are some of the things you need to be aware of in the markets that are being able to be serviced by more of these, I guess we've been using the term DIY, but the not all under one roof type scenario for that vehicle solution.
Yeah, because these cars are different. You can't really treat them like just a straight up project car like mine. Like
I don't think so.
I don't see any owners really. I don't think they should think that they're just going to start tearing them apart and working on them. That seems a little wild to me, but maybe there's some owners out there that want to, but I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, they almost need a different level of like white glove treatment, I guess, that comes along with it. And I guess you hope that it does for the price tags of.
Well, no doubt. And there's also.
When your $200,000 car ends up with another $100,000 price add on to it, you'd kind of hope.
Yeah, or in addition to that, it's the expectations of what the performance is supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, if somebody opens the hood on a Viper and they see an Enthmoto logo in there, like there's some level of expectation of what that car is going to perform like.
Yeah.
For us as a company, thinking about the idea of mail order turbo systems, like if we did that, we could probably sell a bunch, I bet. But then our brand is then associated with something that we don't have control over. How well was it put together? How well was the car executed? What is the finished product like? And I don't want that. We don't want that.
Yeah.
And
even like certified installers maybe is probably the farthest extent.
Yeah.
Like that would be about it. Yeah. Guys, thank you for tuning in to the Bogetti Clips YouTube channel. For the full podcast, check us out on Bogetti Studios YouTube and all your audio platforms. Also, hit that subscribe button to not miss out on any of the new Bogetti clips coming up.